unaware his wife was the secret billionaire who owned the company he worked for. He kicked her out for his mistress. Before we dive in, remember to hit that subscribe button and let me know your city in the comments. Enjoy the story time. The cardboard boxes littered the manicured lawn like grave markers. Maya Chen pulled into the driveway and sat motionless, her hands gripping the steering wheel. Her belongings were scattered across the grass she'd carefully tended just days before, clothes spilling from black garbage bags, books stacked haphazardly, her gray-tant's handmade quilt draped over a box, absorbing moisture from the automatic sprinklers still running their programmed cycle. Her heart didn't pound or race. It simply stopped, as if her body understood before her mind could process that everything was about to shatter. She stepped out slowly, her movements deliberate and calm as she walked past her possessions strewn like refuse toward the sage-green door. The door she'd spent last autumn painting. The door with the biometric lock she'd personally installed. The door to the house she'd purchased with her own money, though Derek had no idea. Derek knew so little, really. The door swung open before she reached it. Derek stood in the threshold, and he wasn't alone. Behind him, wrapped in one of Maya's silk robes, the champagne one she treated herself to for her last birthday, was Jessica. Maya recognized her from the corporate holiday party. Young, blonde, wearing too much makeup and a smile that radiated triumph. Maya, Derek's voice was flat, devoid of guilt or shame, just irritation, as if she were interrupting something important. I packed your things. I think it's better if you find somewhere else to stay. She looked at him, truly looked at him. 7 years of marriage. 7 years of coming home to this man, preparing meals he barely acknowledged, listening to his complaints about his supervisor, his colleagues, his perpetual stress. 7 years of making herself smaller so he could feel larger. Stay somewhere else, she repeated, her voice steadier than her emotions. Yeah, look, I don't want drama. He crossed his arms, and Maya noticed the luxury watch she'd given him last Christmas, the designer shirt she'd collected from the dry cleaner yesterday. He stood in the house she owned, beside the woman he'd been betraying her with, telling her to leave. Jessica and I, we're together now, have been for a while. You had to know this wasn't working. Jessica shifted behind him, and Maya caught it. The subtle smirk, the way she pressed closer to Derek, claiming her territory. How long? Maya asked. Does it matter? How long, Derek? He sighed as if she were being unreasonable. 2 years, give or take. 2 years, 730 days of deception. 2 years of coming home to her after being with someone else. 2 years of I love you and how was your day, honey? While he constructed an entire parallel life behind her back. You need to leave, Maya. Don't make me call someone. There it was, the threat. Standing in her house wearing her gifts, living the life she'd provided. She could tell him right now. Could pull out her phone and show him the property deed with her name held in a corporate trust he'd never bothered to investigate. Could explain the company, reveal who actually signed his paychecks, expose the fact that everything he believed he'd built was constructed on her foundation. But she didn't. Because Maya had learned something crucial in the business world. Never reveal your hand until you're prepared to claim the entire pot. Okay, she said simply. Derek blinked. He'd anticipated a fight, tears, drama. Okay, I'll take my things. The important items are in the boxes anyway. The rest we can figure out later. We, he said it automatically, him and Jessica, as if they were the unit now. Maya walked to her boxes. Her hands remained steady as she loaded them into her car. 1 trip, 2 trips, 3. Derek and Jessica retreated inside after the first load, closing the door. She could hear their laughter through the walls. The quilt was damp. She folded it carefully and placed it on the front seat. Her gray-tant's face flashed through her mind, strong, brilliant, unshakable. The woman who'd built an empire from nothing and taught Maya to do the same. "Don't let anyone diminish you, sweetheart," Aunt May used to say. "And when someone reveals who they are, believe them immediately." Derek had just shown her exactly who he was. As Maya loaded the final box, Mrs. Patterson from across the street stood on her porch, watching with obvious pity. The elderly woman raised her hand in a small wave. Maya waved back. By tomorrow, the entire neighborhood would know. By next week, his family would hear. Everyone would discuss poor Maya, evicted from her own home, replaced by a younger woman. Let them talk. She got in her car and drove away without a backward glance at the sage-green door, the perfect lawn, the life she'd built for a man who saw her as disposable. Her phone rang. The name on the screen made her breathe deeply, Robert Chen. No, she needed to avoid using that name. She'd programmed it as RC, her chief financial officer. She answered via Bluetooth. "Not now, Richard. I saw the security alert from your residence. The cameras. Are you?" "I'm fine. Maya, he can't just evict you from your own property. I can have legal there in 20 minutes. We can have him removed." No, her voice was calm, the voice she used in boardrooms when she was about to dismantle a competitor. "Don't do anything. Not yet." Richard was quiet for a moment. "Then you have a plan." "I always have a plan." "How long are you going to let him think he won?" Maya smiled, and it wasn't kind. It was the smile of a woman who'd built a $3 billion empire in secret, who'd played the long game before, who understood that revenge was a dish best served cold. "Long enough for him to get comfortable," she said. "Long enough for him to think he escaped consequences. Long enough for it to hurt when everything collapses." She ended the call and drove toward the city, toward her real life, the one Derek never knew existed. In her rearview mirror, her old neighborhood vanished. That version of Maya, the one who made herself small, who pretended to be ordinary, who loved a man unworthy of her, was gone. What Derek didn't know, what he couldn't possibly imagine in his narrow, selfish mind, was that he hadn't just evicted his wife. He just declared war on the woman who owned everything he thought was his. And Maya never lost. The penthouse suite at the Continental Hotel had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the entire city. Maya stood before them in the same clothes from earlier, watching the sunset paint the skyline she'd helped build. Derek thought she was a mid-level employee at some tech company. That was the story she'd told him 7 years ago when they met, and he'd never questioned it. Why would he? She dressed modestly, drove a regular car, never displayed wealth or status. She'd played the part perfectly. The truth was so much bigger. Maya Chen, formerly Maya Lin before she married Derek and took his ordinary surname to blend in, was the sole owner and CEO of Lin Tech Industries, a corporate empire worth $3 billion. But nobody knew that. Not the public, not the press, and certainly not her soon-to-be ex-husband. Her great-aunt, Mei Lin, had started a small software company in the 1980s. While everyone dismissed her as just another woman trying to compete in a man's world, Mei quietly built something extraordinary. By the time Maya was born, Lin Tech was worth $50 million. By the time Maya turned 16, it was worth $200 million. May had raised Maya after her parents died in a plane crash. She taught her everything: coding, business strategy, negotiation, investment. More importantly, she taught her about people. Money changes how people see you, May had said during one of their late-night conversations in her office. They don't see you anymore. They see dollar signs, opportunities, what they can extract from you. If you want to know who genuinely loves you, sweetheart, you have to hide who you really are. Maya had taken that lesson to heart. When May died 8 years ago, she left everything to Maya. 25 years old and suddenly responsible for a $500 million company. The board had tried to push her out, thinking she was too young, too inexperienced, too soft. They had no idea who they were dealing with. Within 5 years, Maya had restructured the entire company, diversified into cybersecurity and artificial intelligence, and grown the value to over $1 billion. She did it all while maintaining complete privacy, operating through a complex network of holding companies and trusts. In public records, Lin Tech Industries was owned by ML Holdings, which was owned by Lin Trust Corporation, which was owned by a dozen smaller entities that all eventually led back to her. But her name never appeared on anything public. She attended board meetings remotely. She gave no interviews. She stayed invisible. 3 years into running the company, she'd been exhausted and lonely. All her college friends had drifted away when she couldn't explain why she was always busy. Dating was impossible. Men either wanted her money when they discovered who she was, or they felt threatened and insecure. So she decided to try something different. She'd created a fake identity in the company's HR system. Maya Lin, mid-level project coordinator making $75,000 a year. She'd rented a modest apartment, bought a regular car, and started living like a normal person, just to experience what it felt like, just to meet someone who might actually love her for herself. That's when she met Derek. He'd been working in sales at one of her subsidiary companies, struggling to meet his targets. He was charming, confident, always discussing his big plans for the future. He'd asked her out after a company happy hour and she'd said yes. The first year was good. He treated her well, or at least she thought he did. He was attentive, romantic, always planning dates. When he proposed, she convinced herself she'd found what she was looking for: genuine love. Looking back now, she could see the signs she'd missed. The way he always ordered the most expensive items on menus, even though he knew money was supposedly tight for both of them. The way he'd hinted that she should ask for a raise, find a better job, earn more money. The way he'd been so excited when she told him about her inheritance from a great-aunt, $50,000, she'd claimed, though she'd actually transferred $5 million into a joint account she carefully managed. He'd wanted to spend it immediately on a new car, a bigger apartment, luxury watches. She'd convinced him to be smart about it, to invest most of it, to buy the house. He'd agreed because he thought he'd benefit from her modest inheritance. If only he knew that the house he thought they'd bought together with her inheritance was actually purchased through one of her holding companies. That the mortgage he thought they were paying was actually just money she transferred to herself. That every comfort he enjoyed, every promotion he received at work, every opportunity that came his way, it all came from her. She'd given him a position in the marketing department of one of her fastest-growing subsidiaries. She'd made sure his managers knew he was valuable, that he got favorable reviews, that he felt successful. All the while, he'd come home and complained about his incompetent supervisor and the idiots in upper management who didn't appreciate his talent. He was complaining about her, he just didn't know it. And through it all, she'd played her part, the supportive wife, The woman who prepared his meals and managed his dry cleaning. The one who listened to his dreams and encouraged him and made herself smaller so he could feel bigger. Why had she done it? Because she'd wanted desperately to believe she'd found someone who loved her for herself. Because she thought maybe, just maybe, if she could give him a good life without him knowing where it came from, his love would be real. But it wasn't real. It never had been. Her phone buzzed. A text from Richard. Hotel is secure. Your personal items from the residence will be retrieved tomorrow through legal channels. The team is standing by for your instructions. She had a team, a whole team of people who managed her real life. Personal assistants, lawyers, security, financial advisors. None of them had ever met Derek. He'd never known they existed. Another text came through, this one from her lawyer, Angela. Divorce papers are ready to file. How do you want to proceed? Maya typed back, file through a standard attorney. Make it look normal. I'm asking for nothing in the settlement. He gets to keep whatever he thinks is his. Angela's response was immediate. Nothing. Maya, legally, you're entitled to. I know what I'm legally entitled to. Trust me, this is part of the plan. She walked to the minibar and poured herself a glass of water. No alcohol. She needed her mind sharp. This was business now, and she was exceptional at business. Her reflection stared back at her from the dark window. She looked tired. When had she started looking so tired? Derek used to tell her she was beautiful, but those compliments had evaporated over the last year. He'd started making little comments instead, about her weight, about her hair, about how she dressed. Always framed as concern or helpful suggestions, but she heard what he really meant. She wasn't good enough anymore. Jessica was younger, thinner, blonder, everything Maya apparently wasn't. But here's what Derek didn't understand. Maya had been beautiful all along. She'd just been hiding it, like she'd been hiding everything else. Tomorrow she'd stop hiding. She pulled out her tablet and opened the secured app that gave her access to her company's systems. With a few taps, she pulled up Derek's employee file. His salary, $95,000 a year. His performance reviews, all excellent because she'd made sure of it. His benefits package, top-tier health insurance, company car allowance, stock options that would vest in 6 months. Stock options in a company he didn't know his wife owned. She smiled. Then she pulled up Jessica's file. 27 years old, secretary in the executive office suite, making $42,000 a year, no stock options, standard benefits. But here was the interesting part. Jessica had signed a company morality clause as part of her employment contract. All employees in the executive suites did. It was standard for positions with access to sensitive information. The clause specifically prohibited relationships with married coworkers. Maya had written that clause herself 5 years ago. She took a screenshot of both files and sent them to Richard and Angela in a secured message. Begin phase 1 tomorrow morning. Employment termination for cause. Both of them. Make it clean and legal. Angela responded, You're sure about this? The timing will look suspicious if you do it this fast. They've been having an affair for 2 years in violation of company policy. That's not suspicious. That's just enforcing the rules. Richard added, What about the house? Give them 30 days notice through the trust. Standard eviction procedures. Everything by the book. And his car. Maya had forgotten about the car. The BMW he loved so much. The one he'd gotten through the company's executive vehicle program. A program he barely qualified for but got approved for anyway because she'd made a call. The car is a company lease. Employment termination means vehicle return. Schedule the repossession. She set down her tablet and looked out at the city again. Somewhere out there, in the house with the sage green door, Derek and Jessica were probably celebrating. Maybe they were in her bed. Maybe they were laughing about how easy it had been to get rid of her. Let them laugh. Let them have their moment. Because Maya had learned something important from her gray tan. The best revenge wasn't loud or dramatic. It wasn't screaming or crying or begging someone to see your worth. The best revenge was quiet, calculated, and absolutely devastating. Derek had evicted her from her own house, thinking he was taking control of his life. He had no idea he just set his entire world on fire. 3 months later, Derek Mitchell sat in a cheap motel room, staring at his phone as another notification appeared. Secret billionaire wife evicted by clueless husband was trending again. His life had become a cautionary tale, a meme, a symbol of masculine arrogance and stupidity. And Maya had stepped into the light, claiming her empire, inspiring millions of women to own their success and demand respect. She'd won completely and utterly. And Derek was left with nothing but the bitter knowledge that he'd thrown away the best thing that ever happened to him, all because he'd been too blind to see what was right in front of him. He'd had everything, and he'd lost it all, because he never really knew his wife at all.